Mandalorian.
Yes, that is my Christian name, thanks.
I mean, I think we just jump straight in.
Yeah, feet first, let's do it. Thoughts on the show?
This is the way.
This is the way.
Overall, love it.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks for stopping by. See you next
This is the mini that we lost or we're going to lose off the Christmas one that's coming out.
Oh no, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yeah.
I assume you're a fan.
Massive fan. This is the first time since I was a kid that I've felt that same excitement that I did as a kid watching Star Wars for the first time. I mean, obviously the originals didn't come out when I was a kid. That was before my time. But me and a couple of friends were quite quite big fans of the show, quite obsessed with the show, with the series, the films. Quite obsessed with it, like love the characters, and the older you get, the more sort of jaded you become with things, and then the new films come out, and not necessarily knocking them, but they're not what you expected from the franchise that you love. They've got taken on a very, very different tone, but I think with the Mandalorian coming back, like I've never been on the edge of my seat. I was literally. I might be getting ahead of myself, but that final episode in season 2, like I was on the edge of my seat, man, and yeah, I was just sat there, and I turned around to Rhiannon, my other half, and just said, "This is Star Wars. This is what it's meant to be." Like in a nutshell, almost like you can encapsulate and go, going forward, how do we hit Star Wars? That bit says it all. The emotion, the action,
I think you've hit the nail on the head with the complicated relationship that people have with Star Wars. I've said this before on here, and I have a very love-hate relationship with Star Wars, where I go on and off it kind of thing. There's elements of the prequel films that I like and I defend. There's a lot of it that I don't. The original trilogy, I don't particularly love the first film. I love elements of it. I love the idea of it. I love a lot of the lore around Star Wars, but I'm not as enamoured with the original trilogy. I mean, let's be honest, it's a great trilogy of films. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not without its flaws, especially the first one, massive flaws. But what The Mandalorian does is acknowledges that you said yourself, as you get older, it becomes different. I mean, at the end of the day, it's for kids, and we're not kids anymore. So there's always going to be that weird thing of, especially when the prequel trilogy comes out, and it's like, oh, Jar Jar Binks, and you go, yeah, but supposedly this is what kids like. I don't think they did, because I was a kid at the time. But Mandalorian acknowledges that, and it knows there's a huge audience or potential audience out there of younger viewers, but it does enough to fully satisfy the older viewer. And The Mandalorian starts to skew more towards the original Star Wars fans who aren't children anymore, while leaving enough room for the next generation of fans, which is something that really clear focus and direction is exactly what the films are lacking at the moment. And that's exactly why you compare the Mandalorian series and how well it works and how universally it's praised compared to the latest trilogy. It comes down to that direction. There's a plan, basically, rather than we'll just make it up with each film and see what happens. There's a clear showrunner, there's a clear writer creator in Jon Favreau, and even the episodes he doesn't write, he clearly has a hand in it. And there's a clear vision for what he wants this series to be, and the other people who get involved, for the most part, honour that and stay within those boundaries, which I think for me is kind of what sums up why it's so good, really. Yeah,
I think I've got some notes written down specifically about like Jon Favreau. Like, let me see if I can find him.
Pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was that guy that Monica in Friends went out with for an episode, a couple of episodes. Multi-millionaire, wanted to be a cage fighter. But yeah, his boy's done all right, hasn't he? But yeah, Jon Favreau basically says that these, it's not going to be. Oh, actually, I don't want to jump ahead of certain things. The only note that I've got about Jon Favreau which won't spoil anything, is that he's clearly an extremely proficient, capable filmmaker, TV series maker, storyteller.
Yeah.
Without using, he's a story without it being all.
He is though. He is a
story. He is a storyteller, but I think that sort of phrase will turn some people off to, use it as a description. But I think it's quite clear, especially from the documentary accompanying series for the Mandalorian season 1, is that I'd be hard pressed to find a bigger Star Wars fan. And if a fan could make a Star Wars film, I would say, well, unless they're a competent filmmaker, then that's probably not going to work.
Are you saying we can't make our own little Mandalorian spin-off?
I'm saying I could. But I think Jon Favreau is definitely, from what I can see, he's the brilliant mixing pot of somebody who knows what he's doing sort of creatively in it.
Yeah.
But he loves, and he's a big fan of the show, of the lore and everything that goes with it. And you don't have to agree or disagree with me. Just watch The Mandalorian and tell me and say that's not evident. It's not up for debate, really. I mean, there's all these memes going around, isn't there, of it's like ripping on the new trilogy, saying, don't worry about it, Rey. Baby Yoda's got this. He's saving the franchise, and it's all fun and games. And I've laughed at them all in that. And I say, yeah, he's a character in the show, but The Mandalorian has completely turned it around for some people. I was still heavily invested in Star Wars. I've always been a fan, and like you said, there's been it's been a rocky road at some points. But I think for the first time in my lifetime with going watching Star Wars, there's a real sense of excitement from I'd say the majority of people, based not solely on the Mandalorian, but it's what the Mandalorian has opened that door, that back to that world with all the plethora of everything else is coming out, and to diminish the Mandalorian's sort of place in the history and its importance would be really, really silly at this point.
Yeah. No, definitely. And like you say, opening up the doors, it's restored confidence in Disney. We spoke recently about the confidence of Disney handling Marvel projects and how great that is. It's been a very different story with Star Wars, and I'd already mentioned the films, the latest trilogy. Oof. But this has got people confident in it again. And good, and it's deservedly so. And like you say, Jon Favreau, he has that perfect balance of creative ideas and vision and love for the content, but technically he gets it, and he can act as well, which helps. I think the best directors and writers, even if they don't always do it, they have at least understanding of acting, if not experience with it. Very, very different type of filmmaker, but Tarantino, for example, he's acted in stuff. He's a great writer. I'd say the majority of film lovers and content lovers out there, like Tarantino's work, and he understands actors in a great way, which is why he gets such great performances out of people. And again, he has a love for film, he has a love for storytelling, and also technically he gets it.
Well, I think it's funny you mentioned Tarantino, because obviously he brings up a lot of sort of retro feels in his film, whether it's like the imagery, the music. Sometimes it's the people that he uses. Sometimes they were really big back in the day. They're not around for whatever reasons, multitude of reasons why they're not around, or actors who have just ever so slightly dipped, and it's kind of like, oh, we're about to write these people. Oh no, they're in a massive Tarantino film. And I think exactly the same as Jon Favreau. The reason why it holds so true is because it's not taking the piss. They're not adopting this feel or this world. They get it. They're completely bought into it, and there's no, I don't want to say acting, but there's no falseness about it. They're completely and utterly signed up, getting the newsletter, and that's why the integrity comes across, I feel, because it comes from a place of complete understanding.
Yeah, like you say, it's genuine, and you
Yeah.
believe it, and that's the best acting. Is you don't look at it like acting, you look at it like truth, like story.
Yeah.
So that yeah, I think that really does come down to it. Let's we want to do a quick overview of season 1. There will be spoilers in this, so if you've not already watched all of this, I mean, still watch this, but maybe pause it and go away and come back to it. Season 1, we won't go into loads of detail. Obviously, it was about a year ago now. There's a full 8 episodes there. We'll probably touch on a couple in more detail, but
before we go into it, actually, it's going to be quite difficult for us now because we've got the actual proper wait between season 2 and 3, which we didn't have originally. Like in the States, it came out, like season 1 came out a lot earlier than it did for us. So we got season 2 at the same time as the States. So that time crunch, I think it's going to be a tough wait, man.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you say, especially all the excitement restored in it. It's I mean, season 1, it kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. There was talks of it. There was a lot of expectations around. Is it going to be about Boba Fett, or somebody related to him, or in some way linked to that? Is it going to be about this, and is it going to be about that? And in the end, what we got was a very stripped back, very basic, but not in a bad way, story of a sort of a roguish character.
Yeah.
Albeit with a lot of honour and a lot of goodness about him. Just somewhere in the galaxy. And sometimes going to places from the films or sort of making reference to them. But for the most part, here's a really clear story of, here's a character. You'll learn more about him as you go. You're not going to get an origin. You'll get flashbacks. You'll get little hints.
I mean, he's Clint Eastwood. He's the man with no name. He's, all the way through.
He's both a cowboy and a samurai. And again, that's exactly what works for the original Star Wars, is those he's playing in both of those worlds.
Well, George Lucas admits that, doesn't he, fully? That, the original idea behind it was based on all of these, tried and tested, true stories from the Man in the Iron Mask, Three Musketeers, all that sort of stuff that he's freely I say freely admits to. It makes it sound like he did something wrong, but no, he created something great, not in honour, but just hit the microphone. How professional of me.
That's staying in.
That's definitely it might be the only thing that I get recorded, actually, to be honest. Sorry, go on. You were saying.
No. You said it yourself. He made. He created an amazing franchise, and it was based so much on other great things, and it paid homage to so many other great genres, and that's exactly what works for the first series. It understands that. We've already mentioned Jon Favreau and the approach overall, but yeah, I love it. It really, it wasn't afraid to deviate from the main story when it needed to as well. So it has this clear A to B. Here's the character. He's got to get a thing to the thing. That's how it all starts. He does a job, and then he kind of starts to think, actually, I love this job. It's dead cute. And
well, that's how we met. So that's why it feels so. That's why it feels so good. And
rings
normal.
true for us. But yeah, it's not afraid to then dip into the sort of the monster of the week type episodes, or the here's a scenario where you get to let his actions speak more than sort of exposition.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind, I've seen a lot of people actually talk down on this episode, and it's actually one of my favourites of the first season. But the episode where he goes to the village, and he's got Gina Carano in tow. This is when he recruits her, and they basically just defend. He basically helps train a village how to defend themselves against former or resurgent Imperial raiders and that sort of stuff. There's like a big AT-AT walker and everything else. And it's not afraid to go, I know there's a big story going on. I know we're alluding to this, what could become an epic thing, but Mando's going to help out these people, and you're going to learn more about it. It's great.
Yeah, I agree. I love the almost Monster of the Week esqueness of certain episodes, because I think one of my, not issues, but one of my sort of criticisms of the Star Wars sort of cinematic universe is that surely there's got to be more. There's other people who are important in all this than Skywalkers and / Solos. And it turns out, you know what? There's hundreds, if not thousands of stories, millions of stories going on all around this amazing solar system, this universe. And now, luckily, as an audience, the cameras are actually on a few others of them doing it. And I think when you're that far away from the main world-changing events, that so Mando doesn't even know what a Jedi is.
Well, yeah, they talk a lot in the series, don't they, about a lot of characters reference... They reference the Force, the way people who aren't necessarily religious mention God and say, oh, thank God, and that sort of stuff is like sort of in vernacular in society in general. But they talk about Jedi as though like, oh, there's these mythic warrior monks sort of thing, and there's these little references which again, it is cool because in a galaxy that vast, you're not going to believe every story you hear.
And despite Mando being a Mandalorian and being in the 1,000 Years War that they were in with the Jedi, it's just not enough of his day-to-day interaction that it warrants.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just giving him too much credit and he really just never picked up a book and read anything about. But there's not conspiracy theory, there's a fan theory that there is no written, that no one can read in the Star Wars universe. Because everything's buttons and symbols and there's actual no written words. Or maybe it's just you can't pick up a history book because they just don't exist. Maybe that's what it is. Or maybe it's just a fan theory that's absolute bollocks.
I think the latter. But it sounds fun. I'm pretty sure they do read stuff in the films. But again, it's not a clear language. It's mostly symbolic, almost like hieroglyphic. But...
Oh, actually, something about that same episode that you were talking about. I love the walker in it. Because in all the other films we've always seen, it was like, oh, they're easy. We'll deal with them. A couple of Ewoks take them out in one of the films, but actually, when you're on the ground looking up at it, that is a scary, formidable force coming at you. Yeah. Especially when there's a completely untrained or they've had 25 minutes training.
Ragtag group of villagers with sharpened sticks, literally.
Yeah, you're in a bit of a shady situation when the Ewoks outgun you. But one of my favourite episodes, actually it's not even, I wouldn't even necessarily say it was the episode, it's the start of one of them when Mando's walking across the desert, and I think I timed it at about 11 minutes of no speaking.
Yeah.
And I didn't time it because I thought, God, it's a bit boring, there's no one talking. I consciously went back and looked at it again because it didn't need it.
Yeah.
That we have a character who has no facial expressions, but at no point do you not understand everything that he's going through, that he's feeling. And that is, that's a combination of a lot of things. At first I was like, it's just the actor, man, he's just so good. But you know what? If the story wasn't written, if the script wasn't written, and it wasn't paced and directed and edited in a way, and I think editing is a really big thing when it comes to this. Not taking anything away from the acting, because the editor can only edit what he's got, so if it's not there, he can't do anything. But you totally bought into it.
Yeah, like
exactly what's going on. Because I've studied like mass work and mimes like in a long time ago in a galaxy far away. And it's it's hard, man. Like that is tough, especially to get like as a lead character as well in something. Yeah. To get the audience to buy into that and just follow you down wherever you're going on the journey, an emotional journey, especially if you take into account season 2. Like, it's a great episode. And they don't do any of that sort of weird narrating that sometimes happens when there's a sole character in a house or a building or a car or whatever, and they're just sat there driving, stood there, whatever, narrating what they're just talking, like saying what they're thinking or what they're doing. It's like, who? I mean, I know you do that, Lewis, but
actually,
the rest of us don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, it was at this moment that Charlie woke up and sat up in bed. He thought to himself for the rest of the day,
Yeah. And there's a huge level of trust in the audience to understand what's happening, and I don't mean that from a point of view of you've seen Star Wars, you know what the Force is and all that, because this caters a lot for the untrained viewer or the non-Star Wars fan. It trusts an audience to understand the language of film, and a lot of times just common sense of little reactions, little turns of the head, little changes in body language and posture from the actor. And again, Pedro Pascal, I think it's pronounced. Great actor, and you totally buy it. It's all physical.
Yeah, definitely.
One scene, I think, in the first season where he doesn't have the helmet on. I can only think of one at the very end, pretty much.
And not in front of another living soul, because it's when he's he's after
Moth Gideon.
Yes, Moth Gideon. I assure you, I am actually a fan. When Moth Gideon has basically blown up, the bar, and he's lying there dying. Which, I mean, that shows how bought into this life he is. The flip side of how that affects him in season 2 is very, very important. That scene is so key, and he wants to be saved so much, but won't go against his code.
Yeah.
Especially, you understand why, because of his flashbacks, that his life, he was done as a kid. He was gone. And these Mandalorians gave him everything that he has, and he will not go against that code.
Yeah.
And he's literally lying there just hoping, just any reason I can stick with my code and I can live, I'll take anything. And then the droid says, well, technically, I'm not alive, so it's like, I'll have it, off, do it, sort it.
Taika Waititi as well, playing
yes,
the IG, the droid.
IG-11.
Is that what it's called? Yeah, I was going to say, I couldn't remember what the name or designation, but yeah. Well, I think we'll leave the season 1 roundup, apart from a quick mention of the heist type episode, which I love, with Bill Burr as the leader of a ragtag group of mercenaries. Clancy Brown's in there as the tall alien, who people will know as loads of roles in the DC animated universe and beyond. Also Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. There you go.
Oh, right, yeah.
Great episode. Great. That's something actually we should mention as well, and it goes into season 2. Great use of ensemble casts, and not necessarily people you'd usually see in this type of role. Or sometimes, you said yourself earlier, just Tarantino style, just giving them room to shine. They're maybe not the most household name. Let's try and get them there, kind of thing. So that's really good. But yeah, the finale for season 1, amazing. Probably the strongest episode of the first season, I'd argue.
Yeah.
It's at least up there. And even just from a technical point of view, they really, whether they've purposely saved a lot of the budget for that point, or if at that point Disney had seen enough in the production phase to say, let's start pushing more into it.
Let's release that last little bit of money and just throw it their way.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to the original trilogy, doesn't it? Like, Star Wars are known and good at getting you to invest and care about non-human characters. And when IG-11 gets, takes his bubble bath through the lather, you're gutted for him. And I was sat there thinking, he'll be fine, we care about this person. It's like, no, you care enough, you care just enough that it'll hurt when we rip him away from you. Also, an R2 unit with arms and legs doing the gondola.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
he's a great guy. Get him back.
There's enough that we might have said this before in the podcast, but that brings up a really good point as well. Of what works really well with Mandalorian overall is taking enough things that are similar, and especially with the second season, getting to the point where it's a bit fan servicey, and there is some outright fan service in the second season, but it's never so much that you roll your eyes.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of sort of podcasters and YouTubers and things I watch, who a lot of them are at the point now of admitting, or were before Mandalorian, of basically saying, Star Wars is devoid of original ideas, it's done, it's boring, it's literally the same film 100 times to lesser or greater extents, and there's no new ideas, it's all just the same stuff, blah, blah. This series perfectly goes, you like R2 units? But this one's got arms and legs and it's gondola and
my God, you've reinvented everything.
And again, it is a little bit of more of the same in a way, but it does something fun with it without being cringe. And the same with the emotional payoffs for stuff. Again, you just mentioned it. You care about, the non-human or even humanoid characters.
Yeah,
and it goes right the way through both series, which.
But I think that's the beauty of the directing and the editing in the season one, that they linger on the R2 unit, for instance, becoming the gondola driver, but there's no like, oh did you see? Did you? And the characters aren't like, man doesn't turn around and go, oh my god, I didn't know. Who would have known? No, it's like, it's a robot. It does robotic things. It's a robot on a barge. It would definitely do something barge-like. Like, that is. Do you know what I mean? That's a shock.
Yeah.
Like picking up a phone and being able to call someone. Like, oh my god! Like, that's its purpose. Yeah. So then, as an audience, you're not lingering on it. It's not over-egged. And I think some people who've never not watched lots of Star Wars and come into The Mandalorian first of all, might have not even seen anything there and gone, like, it's just a robot, like, to them. They've got no idea of the lore or anything like that that goes into it. Yeah. Because my missus watched season 1 pretty much, like, the first watching of it properly without having just on in the background, or you've seen the second film before the first film and all that sort of malarkey. But I mean, you did say we were going to move off season 1, and I just didn't. So, bit of a shit like that sometimes, mate.
No, but it's testament to the strength of the first season, and just coughing off Mike, and the great job that it does.
Who's Mike? I'm by myself here doing this. I didn't realise I had an audience.
It's where you put in a little cartoon person on the shot of it. I can't think of any famous Mikes or any Star Wars based ones either. But no, sorry, what I was saying, in a very cool way, clearly, was it's testament, lingering on it, the fact that season 1 is so effective and so efficient and so just all around great at really, really just buying into what is essentially, for the most part, original characters who technically don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but we're in.
But that's why I care about them even more, because I have wanted to see, what happens after the scene when the Jedis leave, or what was going on just before then, and these important characters. I mean, it's something just popped into my mind. Then it's like with the Batman series, everyone goes on about how good Heath Ledger was as the Joker, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he wasn't. He is great as the Joker. But I always like to talk about, he's great, but you do realise that Christian Bale is, for me, great. A great Batman and great Bruce Wayne. And Heath Ledger isn't, in sort of the acting boxing match, isn't outdoing Christian Bale. Christian Bale has raised the bar and made all those those trilogies of films. You had to up your acting game. You had to be on it, because your lead wasn't dropping the ball at all. And I kind of feel like, even though it's not acting wise, season 2 of The Mandalorian is only as good as it is because it built on a great first season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's season 1 sort of beds us in with these characters that we now know and love, and we'll just jump into it. Season 2 picks up with a great opener, chapter 9, although it is season 2 episode 1.
How do you feel about the chapters and differentiating between season 1 and 2, which obviously you have to do, but
I get it. It is one story. It is basically the Mandalorian has to deliver Baby Yoda, the baby,
child,
Grogu, the child,
Grogu,
whatever.
Grogu.
He has to basically get Grogu to a Jedi.
It's very
that's
anime.
The objective. Yeah,
it's very anime. A lot of anime shows do that whole split it by season, but actually, if you were to watch it back, you wouldn't necessarily stop between season 1 and 2.
Exactly.
You just carry on through.
But yeah, what I like is that now, by the end of season 2, spoiler alert for what we'll get to eventually, Mando has completed his objective, and he's now got
what? Spoiler.
He's now got a team that either will literally stick with him, or they'll go off and do their own thing. He'll go off and do his own thing elsewhere, and we can really get into a truly separated story, and there's some great stories that you could do that are already set up.
So this ended up being quite a long episode, hence it being split into part 1 and part 2. So if you liked our chat about The Mandalorian Season 1, then why don't you join us in part 2 where we talk all about Season 2. And remember, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Howdy, and a big thank you to everybody who has watched or listened. If you enjoy our podcast, please hit follow, like and subscribe whatever platform you're on. Rate us and review us, turn on notifications for our next episode, and you'll be really helping us to grow and keep building a great community. You can get in touch with us on all the socials via @DRHPod, or for us individually, it's Lewis Alex Ryan and _Charlie Fallows. Just coughing off mic.